So guys, at the end of the last week, we had basically an interview on WCCF Tech talking about War Thunder path tracing, basically having a Q&A or an interview, like I said, with GAIJIN talking about FSR4 and some other things. So I honestly wanted to talk a little bit about it and show to you the answers and stuff. It is a little bit of a news, nothing too crazy, of course, because we're just talking about the actual like inner bits of how the game is developed, but it is still pretty interesting because we have a little bit of a glance into the future of the game. While we talk about it, I will leave a game that I was playing behind it, especially because, guys, the X11, I'm using the X11, so I'm not using ray tracing in this game that you're seeing because I was having some crashes and stuff. So for now, while it's in a beta and stuff, I still will maintain the X11 without too much, ray tracing, without any ray tracing actually. In the future, I will return using that. It's just that I was having some troubles for some reason, maybe drivers, I don't know. But for now, I will maintain with that, okay? So the first question, and the questions were made for Anton, of course, which is the co-founder, GAIJIN'S, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but still, Laszlo Pernecki, which is the lead programmer of GAIJIN, and then Gergo, I don't know how to pronounce that as well, very European names over here, Horvath, which is a programmer on GAIJIN. So it's coming from these three guys. I will leave the link in the description for you to check it out as well. And the first question was, how long did it take for you to implement, for GAIJIN to implement path trace global illumination in the Dagor engine, which is the engine that we use in GAIJIN, in War Thunder, right? Was it complex to go from ray tracing to path tracing? So guys, basically here he just answers that, it was very quickly actually. In a couple of weeks, they had a model, a prototype, but of course they need special, considerations implementing, for example, airplane cockpits or a tank, depending on situation. So of course it took a little bit more time, and also that they are prioritizing performance, right? Because using this new system also can be a little bit heavier, right? But there is a lot of decisions that can be made to make it a little bit lighter. So some of them, for example, one of them they talked about before, which was the one that they basically just changed the illumination of foliage, right? And that made a lot of difference. So they are working on that. I don't remember exactly, but yeah. So very fast, and yeah, they're prioritizing performance. They're saying, because not prioritizing, right? But they are doing a lot of stuff to help performance, and that's why it takes a little bit more time to actually implement. They talk about if there will be an open source version of the Dagor engine that will be having this path tracing support. And Anton answers that probably by the end of the year. So we might see other games using this type of thing. And then they talk about if they are considering that the Leviathans update that we had this year is the final version of the path tracing that they are using, right? Or there is still room for improvement, quality, performance, both, right? So basically Anton answers that it is, of course, this new path tracing is kind of a Uber solution, he says, right? Which is basically a really good solution for a lot of things, improves a lot, but there are things that need to be improved. For example, upscaling stuff, temporal upscaling, stuff like that. And we're going to talk about a little bit more of that with the FSR, for example, upscaling, and, other things like that. But yeah, they're also trying to improve that with that will help quality, right? Of course, helping performance as well. And also, little bits and inner bits like that help here and there. Like I said, with foliage, for example, that performance-wise, there's always something that can be done which will basically have the same quality, but also a performance boost, right? So they're always working on that. He's basically saying that, right? Like I said before, they already answered kind of that before. There was kind of mentions about that in the community updates and stuff, that they were working on stuff that will improve performance with using this type of tracing, right? because of course it can be very heavy if they don't, do these inner bits that will help performance. Or basically they're optimizing the game, right? Which is a great thing. Again, guys, I'm still having problems with this type of thing, and I have a 9070 XT, right? So it's problematic, but I would assume that this type of thing will get fixed very soon. And then they talk about OMM, which is opacity micro maps, and the shader execution and reordering. Jesus Christ. But basically how much, if they're planning, I mean, they are planning. They said that they are, but how much performance boost can we expect when this type of thing is added? And if there is an ETA on that regard coming to War Thunder. If you don't know, of course, these technologies, OMM and the SER, right, the SER, they're both technologies for Nvidia graphic cards, which are basically able to improve the performance, overall performance of the ray tracing, kind of RTX GPUs, right? So basically, Nvidia claims up to 2 times faster ray tracing performance in some games with OMM, and with SER up to 25 to 44% more FPS, depending on certain workloads. So it's basically, I'm not gonna get into that too much, but basically the two of them are ways to improve performance, redoing the schematics of how the inner bits of ray tracing works in the GPU. Okay, not gonna get to it because I don't even understand fully how it works, but it just know that it is something that it's supposed to improve the performance of ray tracing heavy workloads environments with Nvidia graphic cards, okay? And basically Laszlo, which is the lead programmer, said that they are both being worked on inside Gaijin. The objective is to include these in a way that it is ready for usage, and when the GPU drivers, start to support these things, it will be already ready, okay, to be implemented. Especially with Microsoft, including these features in the core of the Direct 3D systems, right? So inside this system itself, Direct 3D, right? So basically, they are working on these, and probably early next year, they say, okay? So if you have an Nvidia, I don't know if this is gonna work for AMD, and how it's gonna work, but if you have an Nvidia, for sure, then early next year will be when these technologies will be implemented, probably, which means way better performance when using, these types of tracings, okay? Another thing that they talk about is the DirectX work graphs, okay, that are being changed. Of course, if you know this, Microsoft talked about this, that they are basically reworking on how the models, execution models, of GPUs are going to be working with that. And basically they say it's a very important figure, Microsoft. So is Gaijin going to implement these, etc.? And Anton answers that yes, it's a very long awaited, and the idea here is that it's going to be, of course, way more GPU driven than CPU, which means workload optimization for the GPU, and also free basically processing from the CPU, which means overall it will benefit newer hardware because of that, because it's unfortunate, he says, right? But basically he's saying that they want to implement a work graph support in the upcoming year. So yeah, if you have a newer GPU, it will probably be something that will be worked on in the upcoming year. Then they ask about this new path tracing coming for PS5 Pro, which is something that would be interesting, of course, if you use a PlayStation. Laszlo answers that technically it could be added, but of course it's a question of performance. So first of all, they are focusing on releasing normal ray tracing support for consoles, and then of course later the path tracing, right, which will help to have a better image, etc., all the advantages. But there is one thing that they need to understand: how much the GPU of the Pro version will have of a budget to be able to actually be able to fit the performance into that budget of GPU processing, right? So it's something for the future. So for now, if you're using a PlayStation, no path tracing, but ray tracing is coming. Then they ask finally the question that I wanted answered, which is AMD's FSR4. Will it actually be supported in these graphics engine? So Gergo here answers that it is a high priority to add FSR, so it is FSR4, right? Which is amazing to hear, because FSR4 is a really big step up from FSR3, right? And also, he says, of course, that they have basically kind of a mixed match kind of situation with regardings of different games. So, for example, War Thunder, we have XESS, right? And also XELL, but also FSR3. But in Enlisted, it is a little bit lagging behind. It doesn't have all of these things, right? So because of that, they want to actually there's a plan basically to fix the situation, which is add all the technologies for all the games. So even though they're using the same graphics engine, they're planning to add for all the games at the end of the year, with FSR being that pack, FSR4 being that part of this package, right? So basically what they're saying is that FSR4 is coming up to the end of the year, apparently, which is amazing to hear. It really is. And also, if you're playing other games that are not War Thunder, more of these systems will be added to those games as well, right? Including, for example, Enlisted here. But yeah, FSR4 coming for War Thunder very soon, which is great to hear. It's amazing. FSR4 is pretty amazing, right? And of course, they say, of course, when FSR4 is available for consoles, it will be already ready in the game itself, and they just need to add that to the game itself for console, right? One of the last questions is path tracing being added for Enlisted? Not something really focused on War Thunder here, so just gonna go over it very quickly. They're saying yes, but there is a model in it, but they are working on release this year probably. Tough, no hard deadline they say, but it will be coming for Enlisted. And then the last question is Nintendo Switch 2 coming out, of course, is War Thunder and Enlisted, other games like that coming to Switch 2. They say that they are, it's fun to have these new support devices, but and they are definitely considering it, but for now, they're still waiting for the requested Switch 2 dev kits, right? So a long way probably to have into Nintendo Switch 2 War Thunder there, but they are trying to implement that there as well, okay? And basically this is it. I know, kind of a confusing video maybe because I'm not a programmer, I don't understand too much of how these technologies work. I just am happy that FSR4 is coming up to the end of the year, which is great, okay? So let me know in the comments what you think. I see you guys on the next one. Make sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, and bye guys, see ya.